Take two. Of course. Whew. Total crap show outside. You know what I'm talking about? Looks like this in the sky. Left, right, and center. There'll be the S-planes flying through. 'Cause, you know, I can't count the number of times I've been on a flight somewhere and the pilot flies big looping S's over town as we're taking off and landing, of course. Real slowly at, you know, a couple thousand feet most over all the residential neighborhoods. That happens all the time, of course, because that's how you get to the airport. That's where the people live, you see. So you fly down real close to the ground, and then you fly around and do S's, because you got to time your landing just right for all the other flights. It makes a lot of sense if you never question it. So yeah, you know, I don't see how this is not the number one concern to anyone and everyone who's a living thing. You know, how do people go to their doctors, and a doctor that doesn't acknowledge this thing happening, does not ever say anything about it whatsoever. I asked a doctor once, actually, when I was at the hospital, taking someone there, if what they thought about Kimberly T. Rails, and they said, "What's that?" This is someone looked to be about late 30s, maybe, a woman, and she's, "What's that?" Like, she had never heard the word in her life, and you know, she's an adult, presumably, right? She's working as a doctor in the health profession, and you know, there's been a little bit of buzz about, you know, heavy metal toxins. I'm wondering if doctors even take toxicology anymore, or is that no longer a requirement to learn what the effects of toxic poisoning are? The cognitive impairment and the absolutely documented and peer-reviewed and published findings connecting aluminum with Alzheimer's, autism, and arthritis, the 3 A's. Two of them are related. Two of these things belong together. Two of these things are kind of the same, but one of these things is doing its own thing. But it could still be the same thing, right? These are documented, proven medical facts. What the symptoms and effects are of heavy metal toxic poisoning, and this stuff has been known for a long time. Like, I'm not talking like 50 years. Well, we discovered aluminum was bad for you in the 50s, but that's when we decided to put fluoride in the water. You know, a lot of people don't know this, in fact most people, and I didn't until I picked it up someplace along my studies, was that the mercury and aluminum will combine. And if fluoride is so related to aluminum, I can't believe that does not factor in too. But mercury and aluminum combine into a even worse than either one alone element, like a combination of the two. That's what I've heard. Haven't firsthand done that test, but it's just stands to reason, you know. And you know, the Raynauds, my fingers turn white because they're trying to do it now. I feel my fingers, you know, being a little bit numb, a little off. I'm going to say the Raynauds, which I believe to be something with Morgellons. Well, they gave it a name now. One of the aspects of Morgellons is now Raynauds. You just get an old-timey picture and a list of symptoms and a name, and there you go. It was discovered back in 1859 by Mr. Raynaud. It makes a lot of sense. Let's never question it. So it's perfectly normal. It's been around a long time, way before there were Kimberly T. Rails and Wi-Fi and that stuff. So clearly, that's nothing that the Dr. So-and-so should be concerned about. We stick to real practical matters like DNA problems and, you know, genetics. Yeah, whatever. With my Raynauds hand now. People think that stuff does nothing. You know, or they is just such a deep state of denial. They can't acknowledge it no matter what. I'm thinking of like when I, because it bugs the crap out of me, and my poor mom, she has to hear me bitch about it too much, I'm sure. But she's like just completely the opposite. I mean, she does not that she doesn't think it's a thing. She can't think about it. She can't talk about it. She can't acknowledge it. I want to put an air filter, a better, bigger air filter in there, and she's like, oh, like I'm making a big deal about wanting to put in a better air filter down there, downstairs. HEPA filter, a larger one that works better than the one in the air conditioner. And it's like, okay, well, and she's, the open borders is what she's doing. Biden opening the borders. I'm like, the only immigrants coming here are dumber than a box of rocks, because I don't know what's going on in Mexico. From what I gathered, there's no Kimberly T. Rails there, but there are a lot of other problems. Probably, historically, the problems in Mexico have been dealt to them by the United States of America. We are the top of the shit mountain where the shit rolls downhill. We're at the top, right there with Great Britain and Israel, Isis Ra Elohim, the land of Israel. Azrael? Isn't that isn't that Gargamel's cat? Azrael? I digress. We're at the top of the mountain. And who's right next to us at the top? Oh, it's Mexico. Mexico. See, well, we're not the very top. Canada's above us, so their shit rolls down on us, but their shit's not that bad. In fact, we don't even notice it. We just pass it along to Mexico anyway. I mean, Mexican gangs need lots and lots of guns, and so we make lots and lots of guns and make sure they get there. Because, that's where the market is, and that's where you make your money. And that's just, people wanting to secure themselves in Mexico, and so it's a safe place to be with lots of guns for the gangs that run everything, because they need to enforce the law. I mean, they're basically a de facto law there, right? So, because the government's not running anything really very well. Well, except for the mafia part of the government, which is probably just a little slim section there. And in the rural areas, it's got to be the gangs running everything, though, and they need guns. So America is fulfilling that need for an emerging, country that's trying to seek its freedom. See, that's what's going on. We didn't go to Panama in the 80s and test out weapons like lasers and mass destruction. No. We were helping some people to be free there, and make sure the canal stayed open too. Of course, because we can't have the canal closing. I mean, that's bad for business. I'm done. Hey, I'm done with that. Woo! Scene! That wasn't bad. I was rolling with it for a minute. So, to recap, it's a shit show outside. I'm not going to bother showing you. You know it is. What's really lame is that here in Vancouver and Portland, it's so fucking obvious that it's going up. You should look to the south. You can see it. It's going at a very steep angle, more than a 45 degree. It's a jet. It's taking off, but not at PDX. Oh no, it's south of PDX a little ways. It looks like maybe Eugene, Springfield area. And it's being pointed up and going over. See, where's that flight going to? A perfectly normal flight, or where's it going to? Oh, it's probably secret government military business. They're doing some special military. They're taking some things in their planes that happen to make contrails to some place. That's all. There's nothing in. That's just a contrail, right? Contrail. Contrary to popular belief, it's no contrail. Contrails can actually, I learned this. I wanted to be a pilot when I was a little kid. I wanted to be an astronaut, really, of course, but I figured that's, according to the $6 Million Man, the way you do that is you got to be a pilot first. So, I feel like I'm getting a calcium deposit under my thumb here. I don't know what the fuck that's all about. Anyway, I wanted to be a pilot. I joined the Air Force on delayed entry, but then through some life circumstances, I was a credit short for graduation and didn't have the actual diploma at the time. And my recruiter, he kind of talked, I could have still went in the Air Force with a GED or something, but it would have been restricted in what I could do, he said. So, but I was still considering it for mechanics and things. But I think my recruiter could tell that I was not going to fit into that type of mentality mold and talked me out of it. Thank you, Steve Smith. If that really is your name, Steve Smith. Isn't that the he's an American Dad. Wow. Okay, anyway. He talked me out of it. And I'm glad he did. Because I wouldn't fit in. And so I learned a lot about, as much as I could about, maybe not as much as I could, but I learned as many things as I could about planes and plane phenomenon. And I'd seen a contrail once or twice as a little kid, and then eventually, when I was old enough to study things, I wanted to know about them. And what it said in the textbook that I read it from in probably 1977, I'm going to say, when I was 7 years old, was that a contrail is made when ice crystals pass through the turbine engine of a jet at high altitude, 26,000 feet or above. It's the combination of the low air pressure at that altitude and the ice crystals, which takes a combination of a heavy onshore flow from the ocean that's moisture-laden air to hit the mountain ranges, and that, with enough force to push it to that altitude. And once that happens, then the ice crystals form under low pressure at that high altitude, and when they go through the engines, they produce the phenomenon of a contrail that lasts for a few seconds at least. A real contrail cannot be visible for more than, say, 10 seconds. I mean, that's the longest I could, 10 seconds later behind the plane, it's disappearing completely because it reforms into ice, because it's ice to begin with. It's frozen there, right? So if it doesn't reform into ice, that's BAM 1, that's not a contrail. If it doesn't disappear completely, that's 2, it's not a contrail. If it descends to low elevation, it's not a contrail. I mean, I read this in textbooks when I was 7, 8 years old, maybe, I don't know, somewhere in there. And, I mean, it's simple, straightforward, and that's most likely was true. I had trouble finding that definition now. I wonder if, our definitions of phenomenon could be changing over time. I tried to look up the MSDS report of the for aluminum oxide, and it was basically saying that nothing. It was saying not tested, unknown, or there is no value assigned type of thing. It was just it just does nothing if you get it in your sinuses or whatever, flush with water, and the general things you would do if you got something on you, dust or anything. But no, it's basically there isn't a toxic amount. It's not even considered toxic. I mean, that's not what it said 15 years ago when I checked it. There was a whole MSDS printout about the symptoms of toxic accumulation of these different metals, and that seems to be missing now in the MSDS sheets. I don't know, maybe I was just not getting to the right page, but I couldn't find it. Yeah, so I don't know. And people with kids, I'm not going to claim to be the greatest dad ever, okay? But it seems pretty common sense that if your town is sprayed by Kimberly T. rails, every single day, which was not happening 20 plus years ago, but is happening now. Obviously, unless you're a total fucking moron, you can tell by looking. And if you don't ever look at anything, then you're in the deepest state of denial. What a selfish piece of shit would just fucking act like nothing's fucking happening. Oh, kids, oh, everything's gonna be fine. Oh, yep. You're gonna make something for yourself. Now get out there and get a job under those chemtrails and breathe them up. Work real hard under those chemtrails. Excuse me, Kimberly T. Rails. Yeah, get out there and oh, you got a ticket, did you? Well, you better get out there and make a bunch of money and pay that government with your money while you're working in those chemtrails. And oh, you owe child support? You better get out there and work your butt off in those chemtrails and make some money and give it to the government to pay that child support that they paid for you, you lazy deadbeat. And well, what, you got court fines? Well, you better get out there and work hard and pay them court fines or we're going to suspend your license. Now, you get out there and work now. Because you get your license suspended, then you're in a real world of shit. You got to pay those fines too before you get your license back. You better get out there in them chemtrails and make a bunch of money and pay it to the government right away. Tax dollars hard at work. It's tax dollars. Those are your tax dollars hard at work, giving you cancer. You see, once you get your diagnosis, you can start receiving benefits. It's a good thing. And get as many vaccinations as you can, because you can never be too careful. It's good to have diseased dead cells of other things injected into your bloodstream, to help you build antibodies. That's what's going on. You see, you can totally trust everything that the Masonic doctors have told us. Why, they went to the moon and discovered dinosaurs, so they're smart. Who else are you going to trust with your medicine? Or a tribal shaman guru or some shit? No, that's for the jungle dwellers, where they have all kinds of diseases. Here in America, where we moved into the modern age, where we use technical means to discover what's wrong with people. That's what's going on. Yeah. Here, let me hook you up to this $1 million machine, and it'll tell me, you have cancer. Oh, that's too bad. Well, here's your chemotherapy options. Enjoy the rest of your life. Thanks, Dr. So-and-so. You're cool. Welcome to the future. How do people think that their children are going to live to be as old as they are now? That's where I'm at. I'm 54. And at least 2/3 of my life at this point was under, other poisonings that had been going on for a long time. But I was lucky enough to live in rural areas that had usually well water. And the air was still clean for about 2/3. There was dark blue skies here. If there were clouds, they had shape to them. They were close to the ground a lot of the times too, and very structured and beautiful, which just doesn't happen anymore. Neither of those things. No blue sky, no big beautiful clouds really, no warm yellow sun, and it's unpleasant to be outside. So if that's what I notice right off the bat, how am I the only motherfucker that notices or seems to think that it matters? Everybody else is just, well, we're just going to do what we can now and not ever think about it. Yay. I'm going to vote now so that I can, affect a change in my government. How does voting and this obvious dog and pony show of a two-party fake fraud system, how does that equate as reality for people when it's obvious what's happening right over their head? And anybody with an ounce of common sense knows that if it's happening over our airspace, it's subject to our government, and therefore they're either doing it or sanctioning it. No matter who is really up there in chain of command, it's sanctioned by our gov. it's allowed to happen, you know. And right down the line, what do paramedics think about this? Chemtrail? Or Kimberly? What's that? What if you asked a cop about him? Would Officer frickin' Johnny Law be like, oh yes, that's bad stuff, well, we can vote and try and change things and maybe it'll stop? Or is he going to be like, what's that? Like the doctor I asked. I don't know what you're talking about. He probably wouldn't even acknowledge you said anything. Cops are arrogant. They really, if they don't like your question, they'll just smirk and fucking keep on talking. Really. Unfortunately, I've had enough dealings with cops. They're not all mean, but it takes a real special kind of person to go around and think you're better than everybody else enough to enforce these laws on them, knowing that, you know, basically you're immune to them. Oh, we got another 20 minutes going here. I see. That was 20 minutes. Oh, okay, that's right. I set the timer for 20 minutes. So I wouldn't go on and on too long. Shoot. Well, I guess that wraps it up. I gotta go to pick and pull. Breathe some chemtrails while I get some parts. As my sore throat builds and my nose begins to run and my probably eyes will get red and little airplanes will be just out flying around. Hey, I'm Happy McAirplane in my Cessna. Well, I think I'm gonna go fly around over town at 1,200 feet for a few hours today. Yeah. Someday when I grow up, I'm going to fly a Kimberly plane. Oh, the Kimberly plane pilots are so cool. They make the big bucks, you know. Pilots are so cool. Oh, they're just so cool, you know. It's so cool to be a pilot. Wow, they're so well paid and well respected because they're such good people. You know, good people that help their friends and family out. They're real good people. That's all I can say. Pilots are wonderful, and you should believe everything you hear from your doctors and get as many vaccinations as possible. It's really the bottom line. I'm saying, you know, any vaccination's a good vaccination, so get them while they're hot.